You're listening to a special interview segment for the official podcast for WrestlingNewsSource.com.
Okay, folks, joining us on the show at this time, it is an absolute honor to announce three-time WWE Champion, WWE Hall of Fame Class of 2013 inductee, multi-time New York Times best-selling author, hardcore legend, stand-up comedian, activist, father, husband. You know him as Dude Love, Cactus Jack, Mankind, Santa, and Mrs. Foley's baby boy, the one, the only, Mick Foley. Mr. Foley, welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thank you for having me on. I know you pursued me when I forgot that I'd made a commitment to doing the show, so I appreciate you tracking me down. I know it wasn't easy.
Oh, it's, a busy man such as yourself, hard to find, but nothing we can't do for the love of our fans.
Actually, you guys actually showed me visual proof that I had committed to this. I was like, I don't remember this at all, and then I see a photo of me going, yeah, sounds good, let's do it. So, let's do it.
All right. Well, you've recently joined a Kickstarter project to get the documentary "I Am Santa Claus" up and running, where we follow the lives of 6 real bearded professional Santas for a full year to find out what their lives are like outside of having to portray the Jolly Saint Nick. And the documentary is planned to be submitted to film festivals next year. You're being featured as one of the Santas. How were you approached to doing this project?
It's funny. I actually got a text message from Tommy Dreamer, who told me about this director named Tommy Avalone, who's doing this Santa Claus project. And that Tommy Avalone has made, I think, 4 films, and he's made it a point to put a wrestler in every one of them. Nice. So Dreamer was actually, I believe, in his movie Mancation. And so they contacted me. They found out I was a big, Santa Claus fanatic. And to tell you the truth, when they first said they wanted to follow me and see my transformation to Santa, I wasn't completely sold, because I had always I'd always been fairly content to just put the red suit on, have the hat on once in a while. I always showed up as Santa Mick. No one was ever supposed to be under the impression that I was anyone but me with a red suit on. And even when I did the Santa versus Santa match in Afghanistan for the troops, and went out in Iraq, it was clearly just one of the guys with a big suit and beard on. And then you find out that these guys who portray, or I more accurately say they feel like they become Santa Claus, where they don't feel like it reminds me so much of wrestling, in that when things are really going well, you don't feel like you're playing a character. You feel like you are that character. And so many of these guys, they don't see it as a suit they put on and an act they play. They see it as this sacred role, that they have this important, mythical, iconic figure that they put their own stamp on. And it's very competitive, and the lives of the Santas, are not always full of joy after the holidays. So for me, once I learned more about it, it became almost like beyond the mat without the blood.
Very nice. And you can find all the information at realmickfoley.com or kickstarter.com. You can also search I Am Santa Claus with Mick Foley. You can Google that. And anyone...
Wait, hold on. Let me hold you there. Make it IamSantaClausMovie.com.
Okay.
I just did the Daily Show, and they gave us a great plug, and they got the website wrong, because I Am Santa Claus is taken by somebody. So it's IamSantaClausMovie.com, and there's some great... If you go to the home post, you get the the main Kickstarter commercial. Mm-hmm. But I guess one of the ways you keep people engaged is by constantly giving updates. So if people go to the updates, they can see, for example, Santa Claus heckling me at a comedy show, provoking Tommy Dreamer to come to the rescue to make peace between me and Santa. So there's a lot of fun things for everybody. And honestly, if you guys remember going back to Tribute to the Troops and the Christmas Eve episode of Raw, I clearly did end up taking my transformation to Santa Claus pretty seriously, and that will be part of the movie as well.
Very nice. In fact, anyone who backs the project, there's some really nice, incentive programs to get in there. For example, you can get an autographed Mick Foley 8x10. You'll get the DVD, an official Cactus Jack Wanted Dead or Alive T-shirt, not the knockoffs. There's possible voicemails, Twitter followers, even a rare autograph photo signed by Chris Jericho, yourself, and CM Punk.
Yeah, I know. First off, funding this movie is in levels of importance is not going to be up there with feeding hungry children or preventing sexual violence. Things that I've been involved with in the past. But it's a good project and it's a fun project. And if someone in a tough economy has a little bit of extra money to spend, there are some really cool things. For example, the $200 incentive with the 11 by 17 is like, it takes on a whole new proportion. It makes the 8x10 just look downright cheesy. And that came about because I had this classic photo of me dropping the elbow on Jericho at the WWE Hall of Fame with Punk kind of standing there observing. And I just happened to ask Jericho if he would mind signing like up to 50 of them. And he said, sure. And then Punk, Punk every once in a while send me a text to see what I'm up to. And I hate to bother people. I really do. But I was like, hey, you think you'd mind doing this? And all of a sudden we had like a genuine collector's edition on our hands. So in that case, and I think there's only about 10 of the 50 left. So if people want this, they can jump on it. But to give you an idea of, like kind of the hopefully imagination we put into putting these things together, you get the you get that 11 by 17 signed by the three of us, making it pretty cool. You get a 60-second voice message of your choosing, a 60-second video message, and I'm willing to do it as either Dude Love or Mankind. I can't do Cactus Jack because that's kind of a heavy thing. I just can't sit there when it's time to reel off these things and do Cactus Jack 50 times without ending up in some type of psychological ward. So I'll do Mankind, I'll do Dude, I'll do Mick Foley. And then you get the 11 by 17, you get the Wanted Dead or Alive shirt that people seem to know and love, the Wanted Naughty or Nice shirt, and the Twitter follow for a year, and the peace of mind of knowing that you're helping fund a really cool project.
Definitely. And you've done, tons of charity work with companies like Make-A-Wish, Child Fund International, and RAIN. Are there any other charity promotional work that you're going on with at the moment?
Well, following this Kickstarter, we're going to be doing our RAIN raffle for SummerSlam. And so, like I said, this Kickstarter, as important as it is not quite is not quite as important as raising money for survivors of sexual violence. So if they had to pick or choose, to say, hold on to the $10 or $20 and help us out with that one. But when I did it a year and a half ago for WrestleMania, one of the problems we had was that the grand prize seemed almost too good to be true. Like, I don't think people thought that it was possible to get as many things as we had going to our winner. And then the winner wrote this unbelievable blog, and it kept his catchphrase was, and just when you thought it couldn't get better, it did. So, I mean, he literally got in this case, it was 2 tickets to WrestleMania. We're going to try to make it 4 for SummerSlam. I don't know if we can open it up to anyone around the world, but anyone who's got a passport who can get their visa done on time can enter this thing, and it'll be, I think, 4 tickets to SummerSlam, 4 nights in a 4-star hotel, I think a couple $1,000s of spending money. You get the tickets to the Access, you get tickets to my show that night, the post-SummerSlam show at the Improv in Hollywood, and you'll get a dinner, a lunch with the Divas, hang out with 1 or 2 of the wrestlers. So it's going to be a massive thing, and it doesn't cost anyone more than $10 to enter. Of course, the more you enter, the better your chances are of winning. But last year we raised $60,000 for RAIN, and I think if WWE gets behind this, which I hope they will, that we can hit the $100,000 mark for this SummerSlam raffle.
Absolutely. Very good stuff.
So in other words, yes, I will be asking people for 2 straight months to give me money, and then I promise I'll take a break after that. That's when I'm not asking them to come to my spoken word shows.
Very nice. And speaking of your spoken word shows, not too long ago you began doing these. Some call it stand-up, some call it spoken words. You've even gone on tour with your Tales from Wrestling Past tour. You're actually getting ready for some upcoming shows. You're going to be in Newport, Kentucky on June 20th, June 22nd, Fairhaven. July 10th in Philadelphia. You can always go to realmickfoley.com/events for that type of information. And you've been getting some pretty positive feedback from it. How all did that get started with you getting up in front of a crowd with a live mic like that? And did you expect to have the success you've gotten from it?
Well, it's been a long time coming. The transition was from talking to colleges where you never really had to have like a set, a talk could be anything you want it to be, but I gravitated towards some of the funny stories. When I did have a chance to start doing stand-up, I never should have called it stand-up. I should have come up with some cool hybrid name the way that WWE did with sports entertainment. Because I think for a few years, the idea of coming to see me do stand-up was a turnoff to people. So I think now word has gotten around that, hey, wait a second, these are wrestling stories. This is like, this is like a natural extension of a wrestling fan's love for wrestling, not some vast, wild departure. And, word's getting around that the shows are really good. And I think part of the reason is I accepted that, there was nothing wrong with telling wrestling stories, especially when I can make them fun on a nightly basis, like the infamous cookie story with DDP. We find new ways to change it up and make it new. And the second thing was I learned there's nothing wrong with actually working on stories and making them better and better instead of thinking that you had to give each audience a new hour. Because that maybe the 2 or 3 people who go to different shows will go, oh, he totally did the same show. But what I've learned is that really good comics will work on their set for months and get it perfect. Then they'll do their their special, whether it's Comedy Central, HBO, or whatever, and then never do that material again. So, I've the past few months, I've really been working on getting some stories down. I varied a little bit from city to city. The Q&A always gives me a chance to make each show unique. But when you have something good, you don't discard it. You think of how you can make it even better.
Very cool.
Oh, have any other comics sat in on one of your shows or anything?
Yeah, the comics who come to my shows, there've been some cynical people, and sometimes cynical because there have been crossovers in the past who just use their set as a way to get to their merchandise table, who seem to be going through the motions and don't really respect the craft. Kind of like when someone comes into WWE, and some celebrities are great and couldn't be more respectful, and some of them just kind of look down on what we do. And, our guys know the difference right away. And so comics see that I really, even though I don't call what I do stand-up, they see that I love it, and that I'm interested in becoming better every night. And so I get lots of, top-notch comics who will come and they'll see some of see some of what I do, and they're very impressed with it, and and they believe I'm on the right track, where instead of trying to compete with guys who've been doing, stand-up for 20, 25 years by doing, musings on everyday life and jokes and things like that, that I've got a unique, gift in that I have cool stories to tell, and I'm a pretty good storyteller.
That's cool.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm coming. There's all kinds of cities. I mean, the nice thing is you can really just construct a show with a single phone call in a way you cannot do with a wrestling show. You can't call up a venue and go, "Hey, can we have a show on June 22nd?" because my guy is there. Because doing a wrestling show requires dozens of sometimes dozens of tickets, hotel reservations, ring crew, all those things. With this, it's really a very pure form of comedy. You just show up, you have a microphone, and you're either good or you're not. And no matter how much someone likes you, if you're not good after about 5 minutes, they get tired of the courtesy clap after a while.
Aside from your recent encounter with Santa, have you dealt with any other hecklers?
I don't really get hecklers. What I get is like the enthusiastic fan who's had a little bit too much to drink, who will yell out the story to a tale from wrestling past. So like, congratulations. It's almost like they want me to think they're cool because I read the book. And so you get that once in a while, but like when I was in the UK, I did 23 dates, and my primary concern was that I wanted the energy level to be as high as it could be when I got out there. And so we really had to combat the pre-show meet and greets, where we'd meet 600 people and then expect them to be as fired up after they've already sat there and watched you for 3 hours. Like, could you imagine? John Cena making his entrance from Mania, and people were like, yeah, we just saw him sitting at a table for 3 hours. Now we're supposed to get excited about his arrival. So, part of making the shows better is realizing like I had to say so, that I didn't have to. Just because a club wanted 4 comics on before me doesn't mean that I have to have 4 comics on before me. If I think I work best with a host and one guy, that's great. I've been bringing Jennifer Bloodsworth around with me, who is a WWE writer for 5 years, a female writer for 5 years. Obviously, she's got some cool stories to tell. And she's been my DDP stand-in and doing an amazing job on the Cookie Story on a nightly basis.
What's your thought on guys who are trying to bring stuff from the comedy world into wrestling? Your guys like Colt, Cabana, and stuff like that. We always hear the old saying that funny doesn't equal money and stuff like that. But what are your thoughts on bringing that side back to the wrestling world?
Yeah, I wrote an article for Fighting Spirit magazine, and I called it "Funny Isn't Money, Except When It Is." And I pointed out how almost every top draw of the past generation has used humor to create a bond with the audience, and that in humor, one of the keys is to build tension and then relieve it. And in wrestling, it's sometimes the exact opposite. You have your humor, and then you put guys who become endearing to fans, partially because of their humor. You put them in dire situations when the humor gets put away. And things get serious. But like The Rock, obviously, was a big proponent of humor. Stone Cold was very funny in the ring. I'd say you point to every top star of the, and generally they have some kind of humor in their repertoire. And then when they're put in peril, they need to set that aside. But Colt, to me, is a great comic wrestler who can turn it on when he wants to, and he can make a situation serious. So I disagree with the funny isn't money people, because I think if they're still sticking to that decades-old slogan, they haven't been watching the product in the last 10 or 15 years.
Very cool. Going into a little bit of your wrestling career, you were known as Cactus Jack, Mankind, Dude Love. But when it came to cutting promos as Cactus Jack or Mankind, your voice would normally start in a soft, sort of higher-pitched voice and then transform into, some sort of almost a maniacal scream. What was the catalyst for that? What was the thought process?
Oh, man, it was just so much time spent thinking about these promos, so that when I had a chance to do them, they were they just kind of they took on that life of their own. Sometimes I thought I did too much yelling. Sometimes I look at Punk and say, man, I should have kept a lower keel throughout most of my promos. And sometimes I look at ones that people think were very good, and I thought they're a little over the top. And I just recently did a Daily Show appearance where I cut a promo on Zeb Coulter, and it's kind of like a parody of those promos you talked about, where I'm yelling, but I'm actually making very valid political points. So that
Nice.
the joke is, host John Oliver had to mention that the discussion between Cole and JBL at the table was actually like a better, more reasoned discussion of immigration reform than Congress had been having. So the joke is that the wrestler's out there, yelling and screaming, but he's making some very valid points on immigration reform. And I think it's something that WWE will see the wisdom in turning that into furthering a storyline. It would shock me if they don't.
Do you think there's anything that crosses the line that shouldn't be allowed, like in pro wrestling? Is there something just too far out there that you don't think wrestling should touch it?
I think you can find humor in any subject. It just depends on how that subject is approached. My example of that would be, Adolf Hitler is. I don't even think there's an argument that he's the worst guy who ever lived. I was going to say he's arguably the worst guy. He's probably the worst. He's probably got that lock on there, and yet people have been able to find humor in Hitler from the producers singing "Springtime" for Hitler in Germany to the takeoffs where Hitler learns that LeBron James and the Heat have lost in the NBA Finals, and there's a much more, I think, poorly done one where Hitler finds out that Miz has won the WWE Championship. So if you can find humor in the worst person in the world, you can't say there's a line that shouldn't be crossed. It's how that line is crossed. So any subject can be used. It's whether or not it should be used, and often the answer would be no. But I don't think anything is off limits. It's just dependent on how it's portrayed. You guys have an example?
I just like the more political stuff recently. The Jerry Lawler stuff, them turning that kind of stuff into an angle. Do you think is there anything out there that you just think is too far, like that shouldn't be done?
No, well, I think that this stuff with Zeb Coulter has turned out to be very thought-provoking stuff, and he does his homework, and he provides enough of a legitimate point of view that you can't, it's not. It's like I said, I said about the Daily Show. They're like, hey, they're giving them more reasoned, thought than Congress has. So I know people right away said, oh, you can't be, that's been poor taste. And making fun of Jerry Lawler's heart attack is in poor taste. It's like, look, I'm pretty sure, and I know I'm quoting my own TNA promo, I'm pretty sure, tuning on USA and seeing a show called Big Guys Getting Along, Making Reasonable reasonable arguments is not going to get ratings. There's only so many ways you can find to get people inside the ring to settle their differences, and any subject is open. Again, it's just how it's handled.
Very cool. You're most synonymous with the big falls, big hits, taking a lot of damage to your body. What are your thoughts on like the safety precautions that the WWE has taken in the past few years to sort of protect the wrestlers, like the no chair shots to the head, the time off for concussions now?
Oh, I think those are great. Those are all great moves. One thing I've said when I go out to do my shows is I try to use just one F-bomb a night, and I try to make it count. And I talk about sometimes how the F-bomb for a performer on stage is like a chair shot in wrestling. It can be used effectively when used sparingly, but it's usually just a way of getting a cheap pop. You know, like especially in the old ECW days, you know, you'd have your guys in the beginning of the card, and it's like, okay, what do I do? I need to pop chair to the head. And then it becomes a matter of who takes the hardest chair to the head and who doesn't put up their hand. And, you know, that envelope was really pushed as far as it possibly could be. So I think that the precautions are great. I don't think the product has suffered at all because of the loss of chair shots to the head. I think giving guys time off after concussions is the smartest thing in the world. Convincing guys that there's not only no shame in admitting you're hurt, but that it sometimes takes more courage to admit when you're hurt than pretending you're not is a great move. And so I'm a big advocate of all the safety moves that they've made. If I had recognized concussion signs, symptoms when I had them, and if I'd known how dangerous concussions were, especially as you got older, you know, I would have saved myself a lot of, I would have had a much better quality of life the last few years. So I'm glad these guys, I like it. Anyone who complains about it on Twitter or whatnot, I can see someone liking the Attitude Era for the, the characters, and if they like, the more mature storylines, that's fine. But if they really want to go back to the days where guys are taking unprotected chair shots, I'd say their respect for, for life is not a high priority for them.
It's almost like the other side of that coin is like a somewhat like recent trend of people like almost being resentful of that style of wrestling from the past. And as someone who, is like Daniel said, almost like synonymous with those type of things, have you ever been like offended at someone's kind of like backlash to that?
I haven't really felt the backlash. What do you mean? Like, do I feel like when I walk through the hallway at the current WWE shows that people whisper about me when I leave and say that I took shortcuts? And is that what you're insinuating?
No, sir. I mean, not like that. Just like, I mean, even with I'm sorry?
Do you think, what are you wondering, the flip side, if guys from my era look down on the guys from the current era who don't do those things?
Well, no, there's almost like, it seems like a somewhat recent like current of guys saying that like, things were taken too far, and people, perhaps some younger wrestlers these days may feel like they would have to do something to get to a certain like that crazy to get to a certain level, almost in a negative like way. I mean, have you ever like? I guess you said you felt that kind of backlash, but I was just wondering if there was ever any offense like taken to that sort of thing. Like you spoke about how now you realize how concussions are signs of like how to see that stuff coming, but almost I'm sorry, I'm wording this really poorly.
There's a famous scene in the movie Patton where George Patton actually ends up slapping around or at least verbally berating a guy who's not physically injured but is in the hospital for what they called shell shock at the time. And clearly the way that General George C. Patton handles the what we call now post-traumatic stress disorder is not the way it would be handled now. So, we've learned a lot. Remember, the first president of the United States, George Washington, died because he was leeched. He was bled to death as a way of healing him. So we've come a long way in terms of. You might want to check your history books. I can't remember if it was leeching or the bloodletting, where the idea was to drain the bad blood so good blood can take over. And our first president died that way. So we've come a long way in medicine. And I hate to like not even enter my name into the list of greatest ex-wrestlers. But I think the work that Chris Nowinski has done with the National Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy as really, helping lives and probably saving lives. And I think you won't see wrestlers suffering from depression and the other side effects of repetitive traumatic episodes to the head. But I don't feel that. I don't think anyone resents me for what I did, and all along, I never resented anybody who got an a NXT contract or anything along those lines. The world keeps evolving.
Very cool. And there are a lot of dark sides in wrestling. You've pretty obvious with the injuries you've sustained. There's a lot of people who get addicted to painkillers or other forms of drugs. Sometimes it occurs with death. The tragic death of Reed Flair. It's just a tragedy as far as what happened. But I have to ask you, how would you react if your children asked to become a professional wrestler? Would you sort of guide them, or would you try and steer them away?
Well, I would try to steer them away, but I would also understand that the surest way to make sure that someone does something is to tell them they can't. That's the worst thing you can do, and it's stunning the amount of second generation wrestlers are out there. So clearly, the wrestling has its drawbacks. It's something that in most cases, guys see it as the best time of their life, and so the best thing you do as a parent is get your children from schooling, make sure they know that this is the business doesn't owe anybody a living. They need to have something to fall back on. They need to watch out for their safety and the safety of others. So a lot of concerns. But if one of my kids really wanted to do it, I would insist that they go to school and have something to fall back on. But I wouldn't tell them they couldn't do it. I would tell them they couldn't do some of the things that I did in the ring. And if I find out they're working for a promotion, that has explosives, and if I find out that any of my kids is being mentored by Terry Funk, then I'll have a problem. But other than that, I think it'd be okay.
Could you take us through the moment that you found out you were going into the WWE Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I actually thought I was being summoned into Triple H's office at Madison Square Garden to be let go from the company, and then then he said, "We'd like to know how you would feel about being inducted into the Hall of Fame." Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I said, sure. So that meeting worked out better than I thought it was going to. And it turned out, that I really, after I did let the rumor that Donald Trump's speech was going to be aired at the expense of mine get to me for a couple of days, I then realized, hey, it's Madison Square Garden. It really, up until those few days, it really didn't matter to me whether I'm on first or last. And the fact that I went on first doesn't make the night any less meaningful to me. Really, it was a great night, and I'm flattered to have been picked. And I don't know if anyone else could have that. I'm sure there will be someone else who ends up being inducted in the same arena that meant so much to them. So it was a great night.
Very cool. And it's certainly been a pleasure having you on. For all of your information, you can follow you at Twitter at RealMickFoley. You can go to RealMickFoley.com, even Facebook.com, RealMickFoley. I can't say it enough. It has been an absolute honor to have you on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. As you can tell, I keep it real in social media.
Absolutely.
And thanks. Check out one of those shows. If you go to RealMickFoley.com events, the shows are much better than you would. I mean, people walk away and they are, almost they're joyous because they have a very good time. And I hope someone takes a look at the schedule, checks it out, thinks about funding I Am Santa Claus. They can go to at I Am Santa Movie or IamSantaClausMovie.com. And don't forget, we have the rain raffle coming up. So no shortage of ways to reach out and show me you care.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And like I said, it's absolute honor to get to talk to you. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much, Mr.
right.
Foley.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.